Welcome to the Designated Drinker Show, the podcast that's raising the bar on craft cocktails. I am your host, Louise Sullis, and with me, like always, is my very, very talented friend who knows there ain't no mountain high enough to keep me away, the Mixtress DC Gina.
Hi, Louise.
Aren't you glad I didn't try to sing that?
I mean, I would also like to hear that for fun, you know, like a little ditty of it.
I sure in the hell wouldn't want to scare our guests away or our listeners away this early in the episode.
Yeah. They're like, are they going to sing this show? I don't think so.
All right. So, Gina, that may not be a high point, but that's exactly what I want to talk about. I want to open the show on a very high point at the elevation of 13,775 feet to be exact, which is the highest peak in the Grand Tetons. The Grand Teton National Park is definitely a national treasure and was originally established way back in 1929 by good old President Calvin Coolidge. At the time, it only encompassed 96,000 acres, but it also included the Teton Range and 6 glacier lakes. In 1943, little FDR, he decided to up that game. He established 210,000 acres at Jackson Hole for the National Monument. Now we jump ahead until 1950. Under President Harry S. Truman, the monument was merged with the national park, and then there was an additional 35,000 acres donated by John D. Rockefeller to create the 310,000 acre Grand Teton National Park we visit today. And if you were in that park, Gina, in that very majestic park, here is the wildlife you could come across. Apparently, there are 17 species of carnivores, which includes grizzly bears and wolves. There are 22 species of rodents, 6 species of hoofed animals, 4 species of reptiles, 6 species of amphibians, 3 species of rabbits/hares, 6 species of bats. There's more. 16 species of fish, over 300 species of birds, over 900 species of flowering plants, and 7 species of conifer trees.
And 1 Bigfoot.
Well, there's got to be at least 2, right? Because, you know.
Oh, yeah. It's got to come from chicken or egg, you know?
So since 1929, all this beautiful wildlife has drawn more than 3.5 million visitors and 2 Yetis, which, unfortunately, I am neither a Yeti nor have I been to the Grand Tetons. How about you?
I have not been to the Grand Tetons. However, you're going to laugh. I have an iFit now, and on the bike, on the walking thing, you can walk the Tetons.
Yeah.
And then you go on like a walking tour. So like now I think I'm going to hit that one. I just did St. Lucia, so now I'll do that.
It might be a slightly different space, I'm thinking. Just, a little different environment. Just slightly different.
Listen, I'm from New York, so the less nature near me, it's fine by me. I'm like, oh, I'll just, I live in Maryland on a farm, but I don't go outside much.
Well, you have chickens now.
I do have chickens, but I find it wild when I have to organize my shoes. So, that's enough wildlife for me.
Well, all this talk about wildlife, Gina, is bringing me to today's designated drinker. He is the brewmaster of Roadhouse Brewing Company, and he is none other than Max Shafer himself. Welcome to the show, Max.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Hi, Max.
Wildlife from Jackson Hole.
Wildlife everywhere. And maybe sometimes it's our friends who come to visit us that we can consider the wildlife as well. You never know what's going to happen.
I mean, I'm down to come visit and to let my hair down and, maybe look for that Bigfoot or something like that. As long as you can keep all the lights on, because I hate the dark.
Well, you find a Yeti in the dark, maybe. Get lucky, Gina. You never know.
Yeah. I'll be the first crossbreed of Yeti and, oh, wait, hold on. I know a lot of men that fit that character already. We're good.
Covered.
Finished. Next.
Let's get serious, Max. We need to know, how does one become a brewmaster if he has no tattoos?
Yes. I'm a tattoo-free brewmaster. It's kind of a rarity these days. But my Jewish mother would absolutely disown me if I ever showed up with any sort of tattoos. So I had to pull a lot of strings without tattoos. But I started my career, like most brewers, as a home brewer, making beer on my parents' stove before I could legally buy beer, right? There's that great loophole where you can buy the ingredients to make it, but then it gets a little gray. So I started doing that. And then I started helping out with a brewery in the town I went to in college, and kind of played around there and helped them mainly taste beer, and decide if we thought we could sell it. I moved out here to Jackson in about 2012 or so. I'd been working out here seasonally, working for a summer camp, actually, doing wilderness trips, chasing wildlife with young kids, and or sometimes being chased by it. So I worked out there, and I knew I really wanted to get into beer. My degree's in biology, specifically in fisheries. So I love science. I absolutely love to cook as well. Yeah, it's a different path for sure. I wanted to be a game warden here in Jackson and play that game. So I actually, my parents were like, you just spent a lot of money on your college education. What are you going to do with your life? You can't just run around in the woods and hope to make beer. So I decided to go talk to the local authorities on wildlife management. And while I was doing so, I happened to pick up the local paper here, Jackson Old Daily, and there was an ad for a bottling line position at Grand Teton Brewing over in Victor, Idaho, which is just on the other side of the Tetons from us. So the Tetons form the natural border between Idaho and Wyoming. I didn't even talk to the game warden. I didn't talk to anyone there. I just drove over Teton Pass, which is a pretty big mountain pass that divides us, and talked to the brewmaster there. He hired me on the spot. I said, I just need a couple weeks to pull all of my belongings out of the woods, because I was still guiding some pack trips and backpacks and things. And I started on the bottling line for a very, very little money. And my mother was like, how do you expect to live on this, working those hours, making this little money? I was caretaking a ranch at the time. So fortunately I had some free lodging, which helped cover some of that. About 2 weeks in working there, the brewmaster came to me and said, I hear you work pretty hard. You're staying after bottling runs to help the brewers mill in and learn the CIP tanks. And I wanted to learn it all. I was really fascinated by it. And I said, yeah, I did. And I think somewhere along the lines, I told him I wanted his job. And about 5 years later, I got his job. And he moved on. Is a very dear friend and great mentor. He was actually the officiant in my wedding. So he was very influential in my life. And he and his wife were very, very important and special people for my wife and I. And so I got Rob Mullen's job, and I was the brewmaster at Grand Teton. I went through the Siebel program as well at some point there. So I wanted to further my education in brewing and get a little bit of more formal training in it. So I went through Siebel in the International Diploma Program. So I got to go back to Chicago, which is actually where I'm from. I grew up in the northern burbs of Chicago. So I got to go home and live with my folks for the first time since I graduated from high school. And I was living with them and going to brewing school there at Siebel. I got to go to Munich for a little bit. And
that shows you how committed you are to finish that, is to move back in with your parents when you're an adult. That is conviction.
I
that
made
is
them,
guilt, Louise. That is guilt. That's when your mother goes, you're going to come to Chicago and you're not going to stay with us? That's what that is.
I went to school in upstate New York. So I'd drive east to go to college. I'd drive west in the summers to work out in Jackson. I'd spend like a night or two at home and very little time there. So it was good to come back to Chicago. And the only deal was that if I wanted to go to a brewery, I got to drag my parents. So I took them all around the Midwest. We went and saw a bunch of breweries while I was living back at home, and got back from Germany, moved back to Grand Teton and continued working there for a little bit longer. When I got the opportunity to take this job here at Roadhouse, we had just started building out and finished building our production facility. So that was back in June of 2017. We graduated from a very small pub system, a little 7-barrel pub system closer to Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. And they asked me to help come in and take a bunch of the recipes that were very homebrew driven. And at the time were draft only for a series of restaurants that we have a partnership with, and take it up to 30-barrel production batches and bottle it. And we haven't looked back since. So it's been a really, really fantastic opportunity.
It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think often people think that, and we've had a lot of guests that prove this to be true, that things just come together and they just seem to happen. But then when you talk about like the dedication you had, you're living in the woods, starting at a bottling position, like your mother said, not making any money really. But then able to allow yourself to do that. You had a second job where you're taking care of something, and like you were piecing it together, and it's just whether it's not dumb luck. Obviously, it's just at the time you may not have known how far this was going to go, but it's great to hear that it literally turned out. But it's also because you did an awful lot of work to get there.
Yeah, definitely. I am a big believer in things happen for a reason. Probably the most like kind of spiritual I'll get with things, but it certainly worked out, and it's been an absolute incredible journey. My grandparents lived here in Jackson for decades, my dad's folks. So Jackson's always been kind of that home. And I always wanted to be here, as I kind of mentioned, with wanting to be a game warden, and I live here to fly fish. I absolutely love spending my summers on the river. So as a young boy, I was told that, I'm going to move to Jackson. I'm going to buy myself a pickup truck, and I'm going to fish and hike and ski. And I'm doing that. And now I'm making beer at the same time. So it's really a win-win to be making beer here in Jackson. So
it's awesome. Well, speaking of, you sent us some goodies. Can we start talking about your product, taste it, and talk story, as we would say in Hawaii?
Let's do it.
So of the beers, where would you like to start?
I like to do things a little bit unconventional, and just knowing the three tasty beers we have here in front of us. We've got 2 IPAs and a Pilsner. So I suggest we start with Wilson, which is our flagship IPA, and then we'll start with our Pilsner as a little bit of a palate cleanser before we dive into our big double IPA.
Is that an iguana on this can?
It is an iguana, which is not one of the species of reptiles you can find here in Jackson. But there's a great story behind some of these products as well. So Wilson is our mountain style IPA. It was one of the first beers we ever started brewing as a company back at our original brewery called the Q Roadhouse. It was a barbecue place, hence Q.
Got it.
And at the time, it had a different name, and like we all do in the brewing industry, there was another brewery that was using that name, and they kindly asked us to stop, and we said okay. Didn't want to fight it too much. So Wilson is a town in Jackson, or a town in Teton County. It's actually where our first brewery started. So it has paid great homage to our roots at this little town in the base of the Tetons of Wilson, Wyoming. The iguana gets pretty out there. This is a pretty deep track, but we're big fish fans here at Roadhouse. Not the swimming fish, but the jam band fish.
Yes, of course. The pH.
The pH.
Fish, yeah.
So Wilson is one of the great songs of fish. And I'm not a big fish head. On my first day when I started, our director, our then at the time director of sales, asked me, "Do you like fish?" And I was like, "Oh, hell yeah, I love to fish. Like I literally live here to fish." And he was like, "Nah, no, not that kind of fish." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I got a lot to learn. But what I'm told is in the song Wilson, Wilson is the iguana, the king of the lizards. And I hope I didn't totally butcher that for any fish fans listening. But so it works out well. We pay homage to Wilson, the town of Wyoming, and here in Teton County where we started. And it's also our love of fish, some of our love of fish.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Wilson, really, this is not one of my original recipes. This is one of the beers that I was asked to help scale up. One of our co-founders, a gentleman by the name of Colby Cox. He was a home brewer and won a ton of great awards, home brewing, and in Roadhouse and the brewing side of it, a lot of his vision. And Wilson was one of his initial IPAs that he started brewing. And it's a very classic Citra, Simcoe, Amarillo hopped IPA. Does nothing different than anyone else.
Is it primarily Citra though? It's like super, super citrusy.
It is primarily Citra, which is like one of my absolute favorite hops. If you ask me, it's one of the best hops ever. You can bitter with it. You can make delicious IPA with it. We make a Pilsner with it. It's a fantastic hop.
It makes great cocktail syrup too.
Yes, it does. I recently had a cheese with Citra in it, and it was like,
what? Is it delicious?
Delicious. Absolutely delicious. It was like a big old slab of dry hopped cheddar. It was unbelievable. So quite versatile, that Citra. But Wilson, 7.2, 7.3%. 7.5.
So not a session IPA, not a session.
Not a session IPA. We do love our big beers at Roadhouse. We make a lot of really strong ones, but Wilson is our number one SKU. It's our flagship. We have gone back and forth over the years is what we wanted to call it. Originally it was a West Coast inspired IPA. And then we quickly realized that it wasn't a West Coast IPA. It didn't have that assertive bitterness to it. It's definitely not kind of New England style IPA. And then even like the Midwest has its, its own IPAs. I think as craft has grown, each region is now creating its own unique IPAs. So our friends down in Fort Collins, Colorado at Odell Brewing have a beer that is a mountain style IPA. And we, one of our first beers we ever did was with Odell way back in the day at our original brewery. And we saw they were making this mountain style. And we were like, well, this is perfect. And it's a great combination of really nice fruit notes that come from the hops, not necessarily from the fruit itself. It's not bitter like a West Coast. It's not hazy like in New England. It really meets that middle right here in the Intermountain West. It is one of my absolute favorite IPAs. And I remember when I started, it's fantastic.
So now I have to tell people I like mountain style IPA. I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't drink those IPAs anymore. I'm into more mountain style.
I only drink the mountain brewed.
This should throw everybody for a loop in Washington, D.C. They're going to be like, sorry, what? They're like, yeah, we only like the mountain style. What elevation are you brewing at? Great. I can't drink that.
Anything below 6,000 is not mountain enough for me.
You must have Yeti on the line.
Exactly. But really delicious,
That's pretty awesome.
Fun IPA. We make a lot of it. We can a lot of it. We drink a lot of it. And I absolutely love it. Love this beer.
That's super cool. Is this sorry, what's...
I was just expressing my enjoyment of a fresh Wilson. The Wilson, and the beauty of being in your brewery is that this Wilson was canned last night, so it's particularly fresh.
There we go.
I always wanted to try. I have never to this day, and I have tons of friends here in DC that have breweries. I still have never tried a 24-hour off the brew, like off the, right when it's canned or bottled. And I want to try that because I hear, I've heard, I've tried it right when they're about to put it in when it's still warm, but I've never tried it after it's chilled at 24 hours or 30 hours or whatever it is. There's supposed to be this peak freshness for 30 hours that the beer is one way, and then literally there's am I right or am I wrong? It changes ever so slightly as a conditioning. It becomes either bottle conditioned or can conditioned, and then the beer changes a slight bit. Is that right? Or am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely spot on. And I've been lucky enough to have a lot of work with and have a lot of folks work for me, spend a lot of time in breweries now, almost 10 years. And I tell everyone, okay, so if you're going to start a brewery, just know that drinking really fresh beer is going to ruin beer for you forever, because nothing tastes like a beer right off the canning line. We do a lot of sensory on our product. We centrifuge our beer. We don't do any traditional filtering, but we always are doing sensory, before it hits our centrifuge, after it hits our centrifuge, once it's fully carbonated, just to make sure that everything is working its way through. And it's a really good batch too when you find the sample port on the bright tank, where we put our cold carbonated beer. That sample port hasn't left in a while, and you just slowly see people walking back out of the brewery with a really cold, frosty beer, and you're like, oh, it's a fresh IPA, isn't it? And they're like, yeah, you're right. I'm totally ruined. I can't drink beer if it's less than 48 hours old now. Well, when you make it to Jackson looking for Yeti, we'll just have to make that happen. I mean,
I feel like I need that to happen. It's crazy. I've been to so many breweries, and my friends own breweries, and I've never, like I said, I tasted it warm, but I've never stuck. I've made beer, but I've never stuck around to have it in the after the cook, I should say. And that's kind of it's kind of silly, really, when you think about why. Yeah. All right, fine. We're going to Wyoming. Let's do it.
Come on out. We're gonna have a great old time.
I mean, like I said, I need a headlamp because I don't want any nature on me.
You have to plan it with a full moon cycle. When the full moon's out, it's like the sun never set. It's gonna be quite bright.
Great.
But something too more in the peak freshness of beer. I actually it's a little bit of an enigma, but in my career in beer and spending time talking to other brewers, I've really fallen maybe trapped or in love with this idea of hop shock, or some brewers call it the hop trough, or this. Right when you package a beer, it almost seems like the hop flavor maybe diminishes a little bit, and it takes a minute to kind of rejuice itself up in the can. So for Wilson, actually, I prefer drinking Wilson at 2 to 4 weeks. I just think the beer really mellows out. It conditions in the can. It's not super sharp from the forced carbonation or anything that might have happened in the packaging. And it can really mellow. And same with one of these other beers that we'll try in a little bit. I prefer to drink those a couple weeks after packaging. I just think they're at their absolute peak then because they've really mellowed out. But I won't take away drinking a beer right off the can line. That is a treat.
Love it.
So what can are we opening now?
Well, I think we should try probably my favorite beer we make, which is Highwayman, our Pilsner. And again, a little maybe unconventional here to go IPA to a Pilsner, but since we're going to finish with an IPA, I love this Pilsner for its carbonation and it's really going to clear off our palate. So Highwayman it is.
I like the can. On the can it says, and I don't know if any of these, for the listeners, it says, it pairs well with a cabin on a river with wild mushrooms and light fused getaway. I said you were doing mushrooms in that basement, and you're not listening to me. I know it. Fish, second reference of mushrooms. I'm all. I see where this is going.
Yeah, I happen to have these Edison bulbs on, so it's not really enhancing the blacklight image here on the in my background. But anyway, it's Highwayman is we love music at Roadhouse, so Highwayman is another musically inspired name and product. For folks not familiar with the imagery on our can, this can actually has an old Dodge Power Wagon as the icon on the can, which we actually own and sits out front of our production facility. This beer was also brewed to pay tribute to a friend of the breweries who actually introduced the two co-owners, Gavin Fine and Colby Cox. And sadly, he passed away several years ago, but he was a big car restoration guy. So this Power Wagon was the Power Wagon that he was working on when he passed away. And he was a big yellow beer drinker. And, I am too, like secrets out. I drink a lot of Coors Banquet. You can only drink so many IPAs out at beer festivals and at the end of the day too. And I got a long commute over that mountain pass. 4% Pilsner is usually my go-to. And again, spending time on the rivers and hiking, a Highwayman is just what we go for.
Did you kind of hone in on some of your Pilsner skills or that kind of light body when you were in Germany? Or was that something that because that's the art of the beer, right? So you want to get there. So that's my question. Is that when you fell in love with the lighter style beers or drier beers, the Kolsch's and all that?
Oh, heck yeah. Absolutely. I love drinking beer and I love drinking a lot of beer. I just love to sit down and session beer. I think this beer really brings me back to afternoons in the Augustiner beer Keller and the beer garden there in downtown Munich, which any beer aficionado and beer drinker, frankly, if you're not even a beer drinker, put it on your list if you're ever in Munich to go to Augustiner, where you can just sit there and session literal liters of beautiful, balanced Pilsner and Helles style beers. So this certainly was inspired by that. A beer that we could sit down, drink a bunch of, session some beers, have a great time, not feel super full, that idea of being full. It doesn't blow out your palate. It's really well balanced. There's another a copy on the side of this can that has a really fun little story on it that the first time I read it, it choked me up. I'm a pretty emotional guy, and it choked me up a little bit because it really embodied a lot of what I really, really appreciate about beer. And one of the things on there, it says, enjoy, don't relish, savor, don't sip. Such a long time to be gone, such a short time to be here. I may be a single drop of rain, but I will remain. And it's just, it's like one of those beers for me. It's like, I love bringing this beer home. If we have a dinner party at our house, I always have Highwayman. I just love having that and sharing it with people. I like to say too, that this beer is meant for the beer nerd, right? Like Pilsner, and lager beer has become such a big thing right now in craft. But it's also the same beer that at our restaurant on Town Square in Jackson, which sees millions of people who are maybe just looking for a Bud Light and a burger at our brew pub. We can steer them to this and be like, hey, why don't you try something else that we like? And we can even get Bud Light drinkers to drink this beer because it is so delicate. At the same time, we source a lot of our hops for this. They're 100% noble. They're all grown in Germany. We run a Braucon brew house here at the production plant. So we're plumbed in by the Germans to make decoction style beers. So we've started doing a single decoction on this, which is super cool. And we don't know if really does that much difference in the beer, but the fact that we could do a single decoction, which is removing part of the mash in the mash process, boiling the remainder of it to help with a lot of that Maillard reaction, brings out a lot of the beautiful bready notes and the true grain component of it. And then we mix it all back up for another step rest in our mash. So we get this beautiful head on this beer too. So when you pour it into a glass, it's just got this big pillowy head. So we can talk super nerdy with beer geeks about our Pilsner at the same time. You can sit down and drink a 6-pack. We do this in a 6-pack, 16-ounce can, which has been a game changer for us right now. And it's become quite popular.
I didn't know you could do that and like not lose the yeast. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, this was even this would be before our yeast, our introduction of yeast too. So we're doing all sorts of weird stuff. It's one of our more labor-intensive brew days. My brewers and myself, we always joke like we spend the most time thinking about this beer. And at the time when we first started saying this, we brewed very little of this beer. People wanted our IPAs. People wanted some of our other products. And now this beer, we're graduating up into our largest fermentation tanks because we just cannot keep up with it. It's become such a staple for us. So we might have to adjust some things to make it a little bit easier for us.
I think the Pilsner, we're going to get to your hard seltzers, but I think the Pilsner, that light market, led the way to the seltzers. Everyone's like, no, it's so far, it's so different. It's really not with the light style. The fruit is the change, right? So there's no hop, but there's no hops in it, but you're getting fruit from the actual fruit instead of the fruity hops, right? So yeah, it's kind of interesting how like there's a parallel there. But anyway, all right, next one, go. Hazy.
Next one, the Walrus. Goo goo gajoob,
Yeah.
So Walrus, this is our fastest growing SKU. It's a beer I'm quite proud of. So to come back to Colby, co-owner and co-founder, home brewer extraordinaire. He and I, we brewed many batches of this beer. We knew we needed to put out a big double hazy IPA. We needed to put something big, make a statement out there. So this was the first beer we put into cans once we got our core and our flagships, and we wanted to introduce a new product. And so we chose the Walrus, and it's a machine that can't be stopped. It's a walrus that can't be stopped. You can't stop a walrus. I mean, those things they're huge. Walrus versus Yeti would be a great one, So the Walrus is a mosaic, is primarily hopped with mosaic, which is we reserve mosaic mainly for the Walrus. I try to avoid that house flavor when I'm designing our beers. If any of our brewers are brewing up on our 5-barrel system at our restaurant, I don't like to be pigeonholed into the same flavor profiles and aromas in our beer. It's an IPA hopped with mosaic and citra is the same as an IPA that is hopped with citra and mosaic. So we like to mix it up a little bit and keep the hops different and separate for each of the beers. So the Walrus is big in mosaic. It's got some Eldorado, some Calypso as well. Really accentuates, brings out that stone fruit component. And to take it one step further too, we do add some peach and tangerine puree to this beer. However, if we didn't have to say that on our label and let people know that fruit's in there, it's such a small amount of fruit that really just helps balance out that beer. And that is so much of what we do at Roadhouse is balanced beer. We want people, if they order a pint of Walrus at a bar, that it's not overpowering enough that they won't order a second. And they can do the same with any of our beers. That's like our number one goal. It's just that balance and that drinkability, which I would imagine most of my fellow brewers would agree with.
So it's like that fructose, it's like you're looking for that fructose and that ester, but it comes from the natural form instead of using something that's not, which is kind of commendable because so easy to just add oil and some weighted fructose to it or fruit juice, to make that happen. That's pretty awesome that you do that though. Can you tell the listeners, you see this on cans a lot, hazy. What does that term mean, hazy?
Yeah, hazy. Hazy. Gosh, I remember when we all thought as brewers this trend was going to die at some point. But God, I think 50% of what we can right now is hazy. Hazy IPAs, I think depending on where you're located is going to be one thing or another. But for us, I'll just talk about us so I don't speak for other brewers. Hazy IPAs, we get that haze from a lot of the raw malts we use. We use a lot of oats. We use a lot of raw wheat, which have a ton of proteins left in them that aren't either soluble in the brewing process or ones that are very difficult for us to remove in any sort of filtration process. So when you pour into a can, some of them could look like orange juice, like extra pulp orange juice, which is one style of hazing. Ours is just, it's a little difficult to see through. And some of that comes from our yeast as well, which helps provide some of that haze and body. And also, I firmly believe the way we dry hop at Roadhouse is a big component of our haze. We utilize a recirculation method through our brew house manufacturer. It's called the Braucon Hop Gun. It's like a giant candle torpedo. It's like a spaceship looking thing that looks like it's going to take off at any moment. And we pour all the hops into it. It could be hundreds of pounds, and we recirculate the beer through it. So those hops and the oils really are able to dissolve into that beer. And I firmly believe that our IPAs and our hopped beer, dry hopped beers, are the way they are because of that hop gun. So a lot of that also becomes insoluble in the beer, and we get that nice haze component to it.
It's really unfortunate, Max, that you're not very excited or passionate about beer.
Yeah.
It's really too bad.
You're so dry.
I can't tell you how many brewery tours I've given and how many beer dinners I've hosted. I really love interacting and talking about our beer and showing off the facility we have here and the things that, I'm able to do. And I remember giving a tour to one of my folks' good friends who were in Jackson. And they were like, man, sounds like making beer in Jackson is like the best thing ever. And I was like, yeah, it's totally awesome. And my mom's friend, she's like, tell me about a bad day in a brewery. And I was like, that was the first time I've ever heard you say that. And even after I told her about a bad day, she was like, you even sound excited about a bad day.
Like when the beer spills out and you're like, how did we not close that?
Exactly. And my response to that for everyone is, it's just beer, we'll make more, we'll figure it out. So yeah.
That's a good boss right there, Max. All right, let's get into the category that I love right now. I love beer, but God, seltzers are like my thing.
Oh, what's your go-to right now, Gina?
Ugh. I got to tell you, I've been drinking a lot of, oh my God, their name just went right out of my head. In DC. DC Brow. Jesus Christ. I like all the DC Brow. I'm sorry, guys. I apologize. I just reordered. We're opening, finally since the pandemic, the pubs are allowed to open and sit at the bars here in DC. So I just placed my first big order and I got in the seltzers from DC Brow. And it was really funny. I was like, Brandon, I'm finally placing an order. And he's like, I don't have anything. And I'm like, oh, well, you better get me something. And then, of course, it magically appeared at premium. So thank you, my premium reps. But, I got to be honest, even in the beginning of this whole thing, the White Claws were a little bit fake. However, I liked the lightness of it. And I'm not saying anything against them. I probably have White Claws in my refrigerator in the barn. But I really like the breweries doing it because it's like you get such a better product. And Garrett from Maui Brewing sent us his seltzer, which I cannot get here at all. And they were delicious too. So, I'm a little spoiled. I'm not drinking Kirkland's best seltzers, but I have drank them. But I'm really excited.
They're not bad.
They're not.
They're good. I drink a lot of seltzer. I drink a lot of hard seltzer. So I'm probably one of those enigma brewers. And I remember we started making them. We had a lot of kickback from a lot of our team from packaging to brewing. And they're like, I'm not making this. And I was like, I don't care. We're making seltzer. I drink seltzer. So as long as I'm here, we're going to make seltzer.
I love them.
What do we start with then?
Ooh,
I want to start with the cucumber lychee.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm picking. I love the cucumber lychee.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. So refreshing. So sorry, I guess like a little bit about Seltzy in our product here. It's it took a long time to get to where it is right now. We didn't want to jump on the bandwagon of hard seltzers if we weren't going to do it right. And we brewed a lot of hard seltzer. We dumped a lot of hard seltzer, and it has proved to be one of the most difficult things I've had to do in my brewing career. Reached out to a bunch of my classmates back from Siebel, and she's like, you don't need to give me your your secret, but like, is this really as hard as I think? And a lot of them were like, yeah, it's really hard to make. And we ferment ours in-house, which most craft breweries are doing right now. And that proved to be quite difficult. It's, ours is a basic dextrose solution that we ferment. There's not much nutrient in that. So we have to play around with making sure our yeast is happy and healthy and feeding it nutrients and, making sure it doesn't shock itself from any sort of acid, the acid it produces during fermentation. So it takes a lot for us to produce this seltzer, not to mention literal thousands of pounds of dextrose that go into this thing, just dumping it bag by bag. It's absolutely brutal. But we're really happy. We brew it really, really strong in the brewery. We brew it anywhere between 14 and 16% in the brewery here. And and then we cut it back with water. So we bring it back down to 4%. But the more we can dilute it down and filter the bejesus out of this thing, just to scrub all the vinous components and this, maybe if there's a little bit of sulfur left over from fermentation, we try and dilute it as much as we can. So we get that nice clear product, really simple base that if you didn't know is 4% alcohol water, we're doing our job. That's kind of
When are you going to make a hazy seltzer? I feel like I would like that.
Oh man, that's just going to be a thing now, I'm sure. Your seltzer's not hazy. I don't want it.
I mean, I like the clear seltzer, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I would want to try it a little bit higher percentage than 4. Like the 4.5s are pretty good. Some people do 5.
Definitely.
I mean, I think you have a very beautifully clean product, and I think that it's very commendable. And you're coming in under 100 calories, super great, really important, like super important, especially people that watching their how many they're going to drink or whatever.
Oh, we went after the millennials. I mean, I'm a millennial, so we went after the millennials. It's gluten-free. It's vegan. There's 0 grams of sugar. There's no carbs. I mean, we were like, all right, if you're like, this is for you. If all those buzzwords really, really, trigger you, this is for you.
I think that's why I like it a lot too. It's really clean. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the same experience I'm having. I find it very, really clean. I like the mouthfeel. It doesn't feel like a bunch of chemicals or sugar and it's really lovely. And I think I've had more bad lychee flavored things than I've had good flavored lychee. This is really lovely. It's, to your point, it's really light. It's super. I'm going to use it's very refreshing. I don't know how else to describe it, but it really, really is. This is
No, I think people need to understand that lychee is a very light flavor, but most people have it canned in syrup and they think that lychee is supposed to be this syrupy thing, and it's really not. It's a very balanced fruit. It's a very beautiful fruit, actually. So if you never get fresh lychees, I highly recommend it. You peel one and eat it. But moving on. Sorry, Max.
No, that's quite all right. It's I think I totally agree with everything you both said. It's refreshing. The fruit flavor is nice, and I'm obviously very biased, but I'm very proud of everything behind it. The package is clean, the product's clean. One of the things we set out to, and the 3 flavors we have, and I'll just, because I think that's an important component for this, the mix pack and kind of the reasons we chose everything. We have the lychee cucumber. We have a huckleberry and lingonberry. So huckleberry is like a wild blueberry type plant that grows here in the Tetons that you have to actually go out and hand pick them. They're these tiny, think about like a decent sized blueberry and about half the size of that. And usually there's a grizzly bear around because they love the huckleberries too. So you're out there and nobody talks about their huckleberry patches. If you're a really good tried and true local in the Tetons, you keep that huckleberry patch for yourself. And it might take you a little while to get out to, or you might be really lucky and just know where there's one growing just off the road. So huckleberry is it's like tourist crack here in Jackson. You can go, there's a store across the street from our restaurant on the town square in Jackson. You can buy a huckleberry scented soap. You can buy a huckleberry hot sauce, anything huckleberry. So we knew huckleberry had to be one. It's so regionally appropriate for us as well. In lingonberry too, I wanted to make sure we had a kind of complementing flavors in there. Lingonberry would kind of be its cousin, its Scandinavian cousin there. And then finally, the last one we did was a ginger lime. And when we sought out to do all these flavors, we wanted to make sure that they were unique enough, but approachable enough for anyone picking up a hard seltzer. We didn't want to go very classic the big flavors out there, grapefruit and lime, just those mango. We didn't want to go that route. We wanted to zhuzh up a little bit. And we're restaurant people and we're food and beverage people. And we wanted to produce something that could become a great cocktail also. So we also have these wonderful, fun little cocktail recipes on each can. And the lychee cucumber, just to come back to that one, since we're trying that one right now, that was one that we all were like, I don't know. And our VP of sales, she was like, I don't think so. And now lychee cucumber is like hands down one of our absolute favorite flavors in the mix pack here at the brewery. So it all works out. And also too, a mix pack's a mix pack. Not everyone's going to like each flavor in there. So it works out well. My wife loves the ginger lime. I love the lychee cucumber. We don't ever have to fight over which flavor one of us gets. So it also works.
No one's sleeping on the couch.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's go to the next one. What are we going to try next? The chill or the crush? Where are we at? What did you open?
Let's go to Crush.
All right.
All right.
That was another thing we did too. In the names, we gave them names, right? So like most of the big brands, like it's like, I love the grapefruit, and it's just, brand name grapefruit. And we wanted to try and give a name to them. And just so there's a little bit more tie to it, maybe a little more brand awareness, brand allegiance to it as well, knowing that, you love the Crush, and the Crush is the huckleberry in that kind of game. So that's a fun one. Berry was a really tough one for us to do. Berry can be such an artificial. So that's just synthetic, gross flavor. I remember the first batch that I finally fermented cleanly, diluted correctly. It tasted right. It was clean. It was like, yes, we have the base. And I had ordered in God knows how many flavorings from every company I could find, back from when I was making sodas and all sorts of other beverages. And I was like, okay, who's got a flavoring? And I called our production manager and I was like, John, you got to get over here. I don't tell anyone, but I got the flavors and I got the base done. And he's like, okay, I'll be right over to the pub. And he came over and we sat there with little pipettes and we were like, micro dosing glasses. And finally we looked up and we both caught each other's eyes. And I was just like, fuck, like these are so bad. Like we are so screwed. We are never going to make this clean. And so that was quite terrifying, because that was many months into this process. Art and marketing was already running, and I was like, no, we got it. We're going to make it. And then I had that fearful moment of like, I have no clue what's happening. Finally stumbled across a really great flavor provider that does a lot of very natural extracts, and they were very, very firm and very open about the fact that they know there was these really top note artificial components in the flavoring. And so we were able to do benchtop trials in our lab with micropipetters and figuring out very small amounts of it. And that was a big thing for us. We wanted the flavor to be there, but very subtle, nothing where it like feels like it's on your teeth or it's on your tongue.
Yep.
That was a big thing. So, we had a lot of people say to us initially, we gave it to friends and family. We're like, try this. Like we were hand making them crowlers and hand dosing flavors. And they were like, oh, I don't think there's enough flavor. And then like a day or two would go by and they're like, what? I went out and bought my go-to hard seltzer. You know what? Yours is just, it's clean. It's got that balance. And so that was a really big struggle for us with the huckleberry and the lingonberry, just like a little bit too much huckleberry. And it's like, this is just like a Jolly Rancher, which was good for some people, but wasn't for us.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
It's good.
You can only have so much huckleberry in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other big thing that we did with our seltzy is we don't back sweeten it. So as we started buying, every hard seltzer we could find, and frankly here in Wyoming, we're kind of in a beer desert, right? It's a Bud Light, Coors Light state. And so we don't see a ton of the craft seltzers out here, but the ones that we did start getting and the bigger brand hard seltzers, we started pouring through the nutritional facts, and we found a lot of them were being back sweetened, and which, obviously affects the calories as well. So wasn't going to work for our millennials and myself. We gotta pace ourselves with our low calorie Celsius. And we just said, you know what, we're not back sweetening. We're going to ferment this thing bone dry. So it can be super crisp and super refreshing. And that also helped, I think, balance a lot of that flavor. It allows us to use less, if you ask me. So it doesn't have to compete with that already sweet flavor.
But for the older folks, it's because we like to do shots of tequila with it or gin and then put it in there. So you have to hit your calories.
You got to save them.
Because I went to college during the beer and shot sensation, and that's where I live. All right, last one, and then we're going to make a cocktail. The chill. All right.
The chill, which is, I would have to say it's probably one of our absolute favorite, like hands down. It is the number one favorite. It's like a baby mule, ginger, lime. It's really fresh. It's got some great flavor to it. Gosh, I was doing a bunch of housework recently and I drank a lot of these and I still can't find my threshold because it's like, ooh, am I hydrating? Am I imbibing? Like, where am I at with these? And this one's fantastic. And I think we'll get there, but this will make a great cocktail.
It's a good problem to have.
Cocktail in mind.
But let me ask you this. A baby mule, would that be a colt then? Like a horse? I don't know.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I see what you did there.
The Colts. You got to put that on the menu in the restaurant. The Colts. Seltzer and vodka. I love it. That's it.
Get it. And if you want the full mule, you get the can and the shot, and you can just add it into it to make yourself the full-blown mule.
I love it. Do you have the seltzers on tap at your restaurant, or you have them all in cans?
We have them all in cans, and we made that decision strategically for a couple of reasons. We saw a lot of hard seltzers end up on draft here in Jackson, and frankly, they were just a dog on draft. Like they just sat. The other big thing that's hard is like the beauty of a seltzer is that effervescence, that high level of carbonation. And most of our draft systems around here are not set to hold big pressure on these kegs. So it did go flat, and then it was just like, is this like, what is this?
What is your gas volume in here? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No worries. We target as high up in the twos as we can. So we like to see it anywhere between 2.7 and 2.8 volumes.
It's pretty good. Yeah,
it's pretty good. Where most of our beers end up in the 2.5 range, and some of them vary based on style. But that was a big thing. We wanted that effervescence, that refreshing, that like crushable, crisp, refreshing thing of a hard seltzer, especially after a day mountain biking, or if you're just on a raft all day on the Snake River in Jackson. Something bubbly is just, oof,
or you're organizing your shoes.
Or you're organizing your shoes.
Hello. Yeah, not everybody gets on a bike is like, I want a seltzer.
Yeah, exactly. So no, we don't have it on draft in our restaurants. Our restaurant has 30 draft lines. We provide about 10 at any given time from the Gregory Brewery, our production facility. And then, like, as I mentioned, we have a small 5-barrel facility up there, and the beer produced in that facility doesn't leave there. So, and that's just a place to play. We're always playing. We have a great culinary team up there as well. So I've brewed a couple beers in the past with our chefs, and they come to me with these, like, we brewed a Belgian double that had smoked rosemary and cherries. And they made a beautiful pork chop dish with it, so like we play pretty hard up there, just like, the sky's the limit. And I make that pretty clear. Like, let's push the boundaries. So, we don't want to take up a draft line with a hard seltzer, and also just the branding and the package behind the hard seltzer. It's got its own glassware. It's a beautiful little package. So when you see a server walking by with a glass of seltzy, it's filled to the top with some rocks. Maybe there's maybe they've made the cocktail that is suggested on the can. So there's a sprig of rosemary or a lime wedge. You see that go by, it's like, that is a good looking package right there. Then it sits on the table, and it's great. We see people of all ages, and anyone is drinking seltzer. Everyone is drinking it in there, which is a lot of fun to see too.
All right, let's do it, Gina.
All right. Well, now we tried all these seltzers, and we're going to make a cocktail with it. And honestly, I love their suggestion where you just say a neutral spirit, some lime, and your favorite. So I feel like I'm going to leave this up to everybody to pick your favorite seltzer. But what I'm going to do, and I kind of wanted to put you with this with Hendrick's. So Hendrick's has a new one out. It's called Lunar, and it's just got a really beautiful, delicate balance to this version of Hendrick's. And it's not been around long, and it won't be around that long. It's not a traditional lineup. It's just here for a little while. So what I suggest is 3/4 of an ounce of the Hendrick's, and this is nice and cold. I suggest that if you're going to mix anything with seltzer, put the liquor or the neutral spirit that you're going to use or serve in the refrigerator, because you don't want to add any more water to this and shaking it. And you also don't want to ever shake your seltzer. So we're using 3/4 of an ounce of Hendrick's, and then we're going to use about 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. Because you don't want to overpower it, because remember, you have this really delicate flavor in there. So what you're looking for is kind of just to add a little extra a little extra pop, if you will, right? So something fun that you could do to decorate your glass, you can add actual more fruit in there, cucumber slices, whatever you like. But what's really important with carbonated drinks is that you use crushed ice. You give that a really cold surface area so that the carbonation has a place to live and land, because CO2 loves cold. And it's just kind of like what you do. So in here, again, 3/4 of an ounce of, I put gin, 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. It's really subjective to really what you want to do, but like this is kind of a good basis of the math. And then I'm just taking my lime and I'm just pushing it down in my seltzy glass, just to kind of garnish it so it looks really pretty. Mostly because I'm a snob and I just like a pretty cocktail, right? As most of you know by now. So we're gonna put the crushed ice and we're gonna pack it in. And now I'm going to I'm going to use the cucumber lychee, tomato, and I'm just going to fill it up. And what's really nice about seltzer drinks is that you already have a lot of flavor on the top, so I don't really suggest mixing this drink or stirring it at all, because you'll get all of that naturally by the carbonation, especially when you're in the 2.7 to 3 range. And then again, if you're using a club soda that say it's at 4.5 gas per volume, obviously you don't have to do too much stirring to it because it will do that for you. So that's it. Very simple, very delicious. I don't use any more sugar because it doesn't need it. The lime juice is more than enough. And that's it.
All right.
And by the way, your glasses are so cute. I used your cup. I love it. And that's it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I did the same thing. I use the cucumber lychee. I think that is my personal favorite. And it is really good. I bet you it's great with that gin.
I mean, I loved it. Like it was hard for me to like keep these in the fridge because like we have all my liquors outside in the bar and I'm like, we can't drink them. And they're like, you're the only one drinking them. I'm like, oh, right. Well, I can't drink them. But now I can finish them today. So I'm excited. Happy hour can't come soon enough. Anyway, Max, you're amazing. I love it.
Well, thank you.
So if you have any questions or you want to know how to get in touch with us or find Max or where to order, or you want to know the tips, tricks, how-tos, or how to make the drinks or what they do in the basement at the Roadhouse, you can go to designateddrinker.show. And again, that's designateddrinker.show. And you'll be able to find out how the blacklight works, what Max does down there, and what micro-dosing seltzer is really about. And on that note, so Max, this is how we always know if you listen to the Designated Drinker Show or not. We always ask one last question. So in this day and age, and I have so many animals to pick from, you might identify yourself with Wilson and you're like, I am the iguana, the lizard king. But if you can identify yourself as one spirit ingredient, whether used in food or beverage, what would you be and why?
You know, I have thought about this a little bit.
Listen!
I've got a couple for you. I think one, I might just be coarse kosher salt. You know, I think a little pinch of salt into everything really rounds it out. It brings everything together. I think that's a great thing I like to do. Or if I just had to be something else, it would probably be sriracha. A little bit of spice, it's got some energy, and it's really excited to be part of your meal.
That's awesome.
Love that answer. I love that answer. Oh. Max!
I had to go coarse kosher salt too for my Jewish mother and my Jewish grandmother too. You got to have a little kosher salt in there. You know, I don't have anything else in my kitchen. It's got to be.
Always. I love it. That's a great answer.
Two-parter at that.
Well, cheers and thank you. And I look forward to making my way to the Grand Tetons.
Absolutely. Gina, Louise, thank you so much. This
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Can't wait to have our date with the Yeti.
Yes, me too.
Cheers.
Cheers.
The Designated Drinker Show is produced by Missing Link, a podcast media company that is dedicated to connecting people to intelligent, engaging, and informative content. Also in the Missing Link lineup of podcasts is Rodger That, a podcast dedicated to guiding you through the haze of dementia, led by skilled caregivers Bobbi and Mike Carducci. Now, if you're looking for a whole new way to enjoy the theater, check out Between Acts, an immersive audio theater podcast experience. Each episode takes you on a spellbinding journey through the works of newfound playwrights, from dramas to comedies and everything in between. Find Missing Link's League of Podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. Please don't forget to subscribe, download, and review the shows. Your review helps our shows reach new audiences. To find out more about Missing Link, visit missinglink.company. That's missinglink.company.